The engineer had already composed 3 different farewell speeches in his head, none of them dignified, and one of them involving a strongly worded complaint about procurement officers. If rescue didn't arrive soon, dehydration would finish what the crash had started, and he would go down in history, if anyone ever found him, as that guy who parked a starship into a moon. It had not been parking. It had been a catastrophic disagreement with physics. He noticed the suit because it was the only thing on the horizon not trying to look like a rock. It knelt in the dust as if reconsidering its life choices. One arm was buried elbow-deep in the ground, the other hung limp, fingers half-curled. Steam or smoke or something ambiguously alarming drifted from the shoulder joint. He approached it the way one approaches a sleeping animal that might also be a landmine. "Hello," he said, then immediately regretted it. If it was hostile, announcing his presence was stupid. If it wasn't hostile, talking to armor was still not a strong sign of mental stability. The visor was cracked but intact enough for him to see a face inside. A woman's face. Human almost. The almost was doing a lot of work. Her ears were long, tapering back along her skull like elegant antennae, fine-boned and faintly luminous at the edges. Her eyes tracked him with sharp awareness, not the fog of someone unconscious, but the fury of someone very much awake and extremely inconvenienced. "Oh," he said, "you're alive, that complicates things." She did not respond. The suit's exterior lights pulsed a sullen red, as if the machine itself disapproved of him. He circled, keeping what he hoped was a respectful distance. The armor was sophisticated, layered composite plates, micro-articulated joints, embedded emitters he did not want to speculate about. This was not exploration gear. This was something designed for arguments on a planetary scale. "Right," he muttered. "So statistically speaking, you and I are probably enemies, but counterpoint. I am dying of thirst, and you are stuck in a very expensive kneeling position. Perhaps we can call a temporary truce based on mutual inconvenience." Her gaze narrowed. One of her long ears twitched, a small motion but unmistakably expressive. If looks could vaporize matter, he would have become decorative plasma. He tried knocking on the armor with the handle of his multi-tool. The sound rang dully, like tapping a cathedral bell wrapped in blankets. No response. He waved. He attempted a thumbs up, then a thumbs down, then both simultaneously, which he realized looked like he was having a neurological event. "Blink once for yes, twice for no," he said, then paused. "Actually, don't do that. I don't know your blinking customs. That could mean detonate visitor." The suit emitted a faint electronic whine, lights flickering from red to a harsher crimson. "Not promising. Okay, new plan," he sighed. "I will stop helping." He sat on a chunk of debris a few meters away, keeping her in view. The silence stretched. Above them, the wreckage of his ship glittered across the sky like a bad decision frozen in time. After a while, he noticed something else. Tiny stress fractures along the armor seams, especially near the chest assembly. Emergency lock maybe, some kind of containment mode. He had seen similar principles in industrial exosuits. If the pilot was injured, the system sealed to preserve life. Opening it improperly could finish the job. "Fantastic," he said softly. "You're not just trapped. You're trapped in a way that punishes curiosity." Her eyes closed briefly, then opened again, as if acknowledging the accuracy of that statement. He inched closer, slow enough that even a paranoid machine might interpret it as non-threatening. Up close, he could see condensation inside the visor, faint and irregular. She was breathing, but not well. "Look," he said, lowering his voice for no reason except that it felt appropriate. "I fix things. That's my entire personality. If I don't at least try, I will die annoyed, and that seems unfair." He extended the multi-tool, hesitated, then withdrew it. Cutting into alien battle armor ranked just below, poking a reactor core with a fork on his list of bad ideas. Right, hands only, very non-invasive, like a doctor who has no license and is possibly trespassing. He reached out and rested his palm lightly against a seam in the chest plate. The reaction was immediate. The red light snapped to amber. Not blinking, not flickering, changing decisively like a verdict delivered. A low hum rolled through the armor, deep and resonant, vibrating up his arm into his bones. He yanked his hand back with a startled yelp and stumbled over his own foot, landing ungracefully on the dust. "Oh, good," he said to the sky. "I've activated something. This is how I die, vaporized by my own helpfulness." But nothing exploded. Instead, the suit's posture shifted a few millimeters, servos whining as if waking from a long, unpleasant dream. Microvents opened along the collar, releasing a slow breath of chilled air. The harsh lines of the armor softened as panels unlocked into a stabilized configuration. Inside the visor, the woman's expression had changed completely. The fury was still there, but layered now with astonishment, and something like confusion directed not at him, but at the suit itself. "I would like to emphasize," he said carefully, still on the ground, "that I have no idea what I did. If this is a sacred ritual, it was accidental." Symbols flared across the inside of the visor, reflected faintly outward. Alien script at first, elegant, complex, then stuttering, rearranging. A few shapes resolved into crude approximations of letters he recognized. Not correct, not stable, but trying. He laughed, a thin, incredulous sound. "Oh no, you're learning." A synthesized tone sounded, followed by a burst of distorted audio that might once have been language. It adjusted, recalibrated, tried again. "Non-hostile entity detected," the suit said at last, voice mechanical but eerily gentle. He pushed himself up into a seated position. "Entity," he repeated. "I've been called worse." Inside, the commander watched him as though he had just rewritten the laws of the universe with his bare hands. One of her long ears tilted forward, studying him the way a scientist might examine a particularly puzzling specimen. "Hi," he said weakly, raising a hand. "I'm the non-hostile entity. Please do not shoot me when you regain the ability to do that." The suit paused, processing, then almost apologetically, "Weapon systems offline." He exhaled. "Best news I've had all day." For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Two survivors marooned on a dead world, connected by a machine that had decided, for reasons neither understood, that he was safe to touch. "Okay," he said at last. "New plan, we don't panic. We don't start any wars. We figure this out, we call for help, and later we can argue about who was supposed to destroy whom." The alien commander's gaze remained steady, unreadable, but no longer openly hostile. If anything, she looked like someone confronted with an unsolvable equation that had just solved itself out of spite. Somewhere deep within the suit, a lock disengaged with a soft, decisive click. The click was followed by several smaller clicks, like a committee reluctantly agreeing with itself. The engineer froze, halfway between standing and bolting, unsure which reaction would look less suspicious to a sentient weapons platform. The suit's chest plates shifted a fraction, then stopped, as if reconsidering whether opening in front of a stranger was socially appropriate. "Take your time," he said quickly. "No pressure. I personally never open up emotionally in front of people I've just met." Inside the visor, the commander's eyes narrowed, which he interpreted as either annoyance or the universal expression for "please stop talking." A soft tone sounded, rising and falling in a pattern that felt almost apologetic. The suit spoke again, voice smoother now, as if it had ironed out some existential wrinkles. "Pilot condition, critical but stable." "Great," he said. "Stable is good. I enjoy stability. Stability usually doesn't explode." A pause, external operator unidentified. "Correct," he said. "I am a mystery wrapped in dehydration." The visor polarized briefly, then cleared. He realized with a jolt that the suit was scanning him, mapping him, probably cataloging every embarrassing biological detail. He resisted the urge to stand up straighter, which only made him slouch more. "Threat assessment, inconclusive." "I'll take that," he said. "Inconclusive sounds survivable." The commander moved for the first time. Not much, just a slight lift of her head, but it carried the weight of a mountain deciding to consider gravity optional. Up close, her long ears trembled faintly, the motion small but involuntary. Pain, he guessed, or exhaustion. Possibly both, with a side of righteous fury. She spoke. The sound was low, melodic, utterly incomprehensible. The translator hesitated, produced a burst of static, then offered, "Why you touching?" He blinked. "Excellent question. Mostly poor decision-making." Her gaze hardened. "Okay, fair," he amended. "You looked stuck. I am genetically incapable of ignoring stuck things." She said something else, sharper this time. "Enemy protocol violation." He raised both hands. "In my defense, I was not informed of your protocols. My orientation packet appears to have been lost in the crash." The suit hummed, processing tone as much as words. After a moment, "Hostility not detected." "Story of my life," he muttered. The chest plates shifted again, opening a few centimeters before locking in place with a stubborn whine. The commander stiffened, a flash of frustration crossing her face. She spoke rapidly, voice tight. "Mobility restricted." "Join the club," he said. I've been operating at reduced capacity since Tuesday. That earned him a look so flat it could have paved a road. He leaned closer, careful not to touch anything this time. Okay. So you can't get out, I can't leave, and the suit thinks I'm... What a mildly interesting rock. We should probably cooperate before one of us expires out of spite. Silence. Then slowly, she extended one hand inside the armor, pressing it weakly against the inner surface of the visor, directly opposite where his hand had been earlier. A deliberate gesture. Testing. He hesitated only a second before placing his palm against the outside again. The amber glow deepened, warming toward gold. The hum shifted pitch, less like machinery and more like something alive clearing its throat. New text flickered across the visor, symbols, then translations, more stable this time. Synchronization increasing. Oh, that sounds medically dubious, he said. Her eyes widened slightly, not in fear but in recognition. She felt it too, whatever it was. A feedback loop, two nervous systems connected through alien engineering that clearly had not anticipated awkward small talk as a use case. Empathic interface, active. He stared. I'm sorry, an empathic what now? Images flashed across the visor's interior, bleeding faintly outward. Not pictures exactly, impressions. Pain, sharp and bright. Disorientation, the moment of impact. A surge of determination so fierce it felt like biting down on lightning. He gasped and jerked his hand back. Okay, too much sharing, personal boundaries. Inside, she sucked in a ragged breath, equally startled. One of her ears flattened against her head, the other twitching erratically. Unintentional, the suit said. Good, he said. Let's keep it that way. I just experienced your worst day and I did not enjoy it. She studied him, suspicion warring with something else, curiosity maybe, or disbelief that a supposed enemy was reacting with concern instead of exploitation. He swallowed. For the record, that looked like it hurt. A long pause, then quietly. Affirmative. Progress, he decided. Pain was a universal language. He fumbled at his belt and produced a dented canteen. He shook it. A discouragingly small slosh answered. I don't know if you can drink while encased, but if there's a straw port or a hydration nozzle or something equally undignified, you're welcome to it. The translator struggled, then delivered. Offer resource to adversary. Look, if you die, I go back to being alone, he said. And I've met me, I'm terrible company. Something changed in her expression then, subtle but undeniable. Not trust, nothing that dramatic, but a tiny fracture in the wall she had built around herself. Not adversary, she said slowly, as if testing the words for structural integrity. He blinked. I'm sorry, did we just get upgraded to not enemies? That feels like a big step for people who met 10 minutes ago. A faint sound escaped her, almost a breath, almost a laugh, quickly suppressed as if unauthorized. Encouraged, he grinned. Great. Next milestone is reluctant allies, followed by people who argue about whose turn it is to save the galaxy. The suit emitted a soft chime, which he chose to interpret as approval rather than impending doom. High above, a fragment of wreckage finally succumbed to orbital decay and burned across the sky in a silent streak of fire. Neither of them looked away from the other. Okay, he said more gently. Step 1, we keep you alive. Step 2, we figure out why your armor likes me so much. Step 3. We both pretend this isn't the weirdest day either of us has ever had. Her gaze held his, steady now despite the pain, despite the exhaustion. One long ear tilted forward again, attentive, almost curious. Agreement, tentative, the suit translated. He nodded solemnly. Tentative is my favorite kind of agreement, very low expectations. Deep within the armor, mechanisms shifted, not opening yet but no longer locked in absolute refusal. Waiting, considering. For the first time since the crash, he allowed himself to believe that survival might require something more complicated than luck. It might require trust, which was frankly much more alarming. The distress signal appeared as a thin line of green text across the suit's visor, accompanied by a tone so polite it sounded embarrassed to interrupt. The engineer leaned closer, squinting as if that might help him understand alien communications through sheer optimism. Please tell me that means rescue and not incoming orbital bombardment, he said. The commander read it, her expression tightening in a way that suggested neither option was ideal. Recovery vessel military, the suit translated. He winced, yours or mine. A pause long enough to be worrying. Both. Fantastic, he said. Nothing improves a delicate diplomatic situation like two heavily armed fleets arriving at the same time. She shifted inside the partially opened armor, jaw set. They will engage. Of course they will. Why talk when you can catastrophically misunderstand each other at relativistic speeds? The suit chimed again, this time projecting additional data, trajectories, transponder signatures, threat assessments stacked like bad news in a queue. His engineering instincts kicked in despite the circumstances. They're not responding to each other's hails, he said slowly. They're assuming hostile intent. Standard doctrine. Yeah, he muttered. We have that too. It's called shoot first, apologize to the debris field later. Another fragment of recovered memory surfaced, triggered by the suit's deeper diagnostics. New symbols flooded the display, older, stranger, layered beneath modern command protocols like a ghost refusing eviction. The translator struggled, then stabilized. Origin directive, cooperation required to prevent escalation event. He stared. Escalation event sounds bad. On a scale from awkward meeting to planetary extinction, where are we? The suit did not answer. Instead, it highlighted a dormant subsystem buried deep within its architecture. Not weapons, not communications, something else. Precursor failsafe, the translation read. The commander's eyes widened, shock cutting through her composure. She spoke urgently, voice low and fierce. Ancient technology, forbidden myth. Great, he said. Mythical doomsday buttons, my favorite. The data clarified. The failsafe was not a weapon but a broadcast system, one designed to override military channels across multiple species. A forced transmission that could not be ignored or jammed. Let me guess, he said. It only activates under extremely specific conditions that no one ever expected to be met. Amber light pulsed softly around his handprint on the armor. Dual authorization, opposing entities, empathic synchronization. He blinked, then laughed, a short, incredulous bark. You're kidding. The galaxy installed a parental control that only works if enemies hold hands. The commander looked at him, something like reluctant amusement flickering behind the tension. Metaphor inaccurate, the suit said. Metaphor is coping, he replied. I'm coping very hard right now. High above, two distant flares appeared. Ships dropping from faster-than-light travel, one angular and predatory, the other sleek and heavily shielded. Even without labels, the hostility between them felt palpable. She extended her hand again, slower this time, deliberate, not testing, choosing. He hesitated only long enough to swallow. If this triggers a self-destruct, I want it noted that I object. Their palms met through the barrier. The hum returned, deeper, resonant, threading through bone and breath alike. Not invasive this time, shared. Fear, determination, stubborn hope, all blending into something steadier than either alone. Synchronization complete. The visor flooded with light. A signal erupted outward, invisible but absolute, lancing through space faster than any weapon. Every channel, every frequency, every encrypted band lit up with the same message, translated flawlessly into 1,000 languages. Cease hostilities. Engineered conflict detected. Cooperation protocol active. The engineer let out a shaky laugh, subtle. Above them, the two ships slowed. Not stopped, militaries did not stop easily, but hesitated like fists pausing mid-swing. Additional data followed, pouring from the ancient system. Proof, records, genetic schematics, the long-buried history of manipulation laid bare with merciless clarity. Not propaganda, not accusation, evidence. The commander sagged slightly, exhaustion finally claiming its due. War built on lies. Yeah, he said quietly, happens more than you'd think. Silence stretched as both fleets processed the impossible. Weapons powered down one by one, reluctant but obedient. Target locks dissolved. Communication channels shifted from encrypted battle chatter to open negotiation bands, confused and cautious. He exhaled a breath he felt like he had been holding his entire life. Well, he said, that's one way to update foreign policy. She studied him, really studied him, as if seeing not an enemy, not even an ally, but a person who had altered the trajectory of her world simply by refusing to be afraid of her. You changed outcome, she said. He shook his head. We did. I just supplied the questionable decision-making. A rescue shuttle detached from one of the ships, descending carefully, weapons cold, posture deliberately non-threatening. Another followed from the opposite fleet, matching its trajectory instead of intercepting it. For a moment, the absurdity of it all hit him at once. You realize, he said, that back home I was considered a mediocre engineer. Not even senior. If they find out I accidentally stopped a galactic war, I'll never hear the end of it. A faint curve touched her mouth, small, fragile, but unmistakable. Promotion likely. "Oh no," he groaned. "Responsibility. My one weakness." The suit began to open fully at last, plates unfolding like petals under sunlight. Fresh air rushed in. She leaned forward unsteady, and he caught her without thinking, her weight surprisingly slight against him. Up close, her long ears brushed his shoulder, warm, alive, no longer framed by armor or hostility. She did not pull away. Above them, the stars remained exactly where they had always been, indifferent to wars, to victories, to the quiet miracle of two enemies choosing not to be. "Hey," he said softly, "when they ask how this happened, what do we tell them?" She considered, eyes half-lidded with exhaustion but clear. "Truth," she said, "unlikely cooperation." He smiled, tired and genuine. "Yeah, that sounds about right." The shuttles touched down together, side by side, their ramps lowering in unison, not as opposing forces, but as two paths converging on the same point. He helped her take a step forward, then another. For the first time since the crash, he realized he was not thinking about survival. He was thinking about what came after, and for once, that future did not look like something broken waiting to happen.